Yo, what is up guys? Delboy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hopefully you guys are doing well. If you're new here, smash that like, hit subscribe, all of that good stuff. So, Artur Beterbiev demolishes Joe Smith Jr. in the second round to become the new unified light heavyweight champion. Beterbiev now has the IBF, WBC, WBO and lineal light heavyweight titles. In short, he is the man, and he put on a great performance against Joe Smith Jr. Going into this fight, of course, I think a lot of people were picking Beterbiev, but they had it as a competitive fight. Joe Smith Jr. historically has always shown very good durability, shown a good chin, never say die attitude, and I think people expected that to really give him a chance in this fight, including myself. I picked Beterbiev, and I picked Beterbiev by stoppage, mid to late I think it was, but I felt Joe would be a live wire in this fight, but honestly that didn't turn out to be the case here. Joe Smith Jr. actually came out in this fight extremely aggressive, trying to force Beterbiev back behind his jab, and he was looking for those looping power shots to try and catch Beterbiev. Whereas Beterbiev in the opening round, he remained very composed, and he was basically taking a look at Joe Smith early on in the first round. He was basically giving a bit of lateral movement, boxing off the back foot a little bit, and immediately it was apparent that, you know, Beterbiev saw the openings in Joe Smith Jr.'s game. You know, Joe was really loading up, and primarily he was throwing looping shots, and he squared himself up a lot in this fight, which gave Beterbiev the opportunity to land his quick, straight sort of counter punches. And very early he was getting some nice jabs through, a couple of good straight right hands as well. And you could tell, like, the first occurrence where Joe Smith got caught clean, he felt it. And as the first round progressed, Beterbiev actually, it looked like he dropped Joe Smith. Joe Smith hit the canvas, but the referee ruled it a slip. Nevertheless, Joe Smith gets up, tries to pressure Beterbiev, and he walks straight into an overhand right by Beterbiev, and Beterbiev threw that shot as he was backing up to the ropes. That goes to show what sort of power Beterbiev has. He can still generate real power while fighting on the back foot. But, you know, Joe walked right into it. I think it was a lazy jab by Joe Smith Jr., which Beterbiev timed, and down went Joe Smith Jr. towards the end of round one. Joe Smith did land a couple of clubbing shots in round one. I recall a left hook, for example, but nothing that really troubled Beterbiev. He just walked straight through he just ate it up, basically, you know. Round two, which is where the fight ended, you would expect Joe Smith Jr. to be a little more circumspect in his approach, given how bad, you know, round one was for him and how he got hurt. But that wasn't the case. Once again, Joe Smith Jr. tried to come out aggressive, tried to give Beterbiev a little bit of head movement, and tried to trade with him. And Beterbiev, feeling confident, decided to engage Joe Smith Jr. And in the exchanges, it was Beterbiev's shorter shots that were reaching the target, whereas Joe's were missing, and when they did land, they were clubbing more so than clean. That is one thing about Beterbiev that he doesn't really get enough credit for, how calm he is in the exchanges. You know, he's very calm. Yes, he leaves some openings at times, but he doesn't get flustered, you know, and that really showed in this fight. You saw one guy in Beterbiev who was calm as anything, whereas the other guy, Joe Smith Jr., in my opinion, was fighting with a lot of nerves, a lot of anxiety, and a little bit of fear, I would say. He really brought into the Beterbiev power, whereas I don't think Beterbiev brought into Joe Smith's power, you know. But nevertheless, round two started with a pretty good exchange from both men. As I said, it was Beterbiev who was landing the hurtful shots. There was a couple of times where Joe Smith Jr.'s legs buckled a little bit, but Joe came back with his own shots, in particular a pretty nice wide right hook on Beterbiev, which once again Beterbiev ate up. But around 30-40 seconds into round two, it was basically almost a replay of the first knockdown. Beterbiev kind of backing up a little bit, taking that half step back, maintaining range. Joe Smith tries to come in. Once again, defensively, Joe Smith makes a big mistake. He comes in square on, he tries to open up, chin right on centre line, and Beterbiev lands like a overhand right type of shot as he's backing up, which once again drops Joe Smith Jr., drops him to his knee, and he gets back up straight away. Joe Smith being Joe Smith, he doesn't try to catch a break and hold or anything like that, box on the back foot, no. After getting dropped for second time, he comes at Beterbiev once again, tries to engage in a slugfest, and, you know, he got a couple of shots off once again, but they didn't do anything to Beterbiev. Beterbiev starts to time the better shots in the exchanges, left hooks, overhand rights, and then he starts to mix up his uppercuts in the exchanges, which hurts Joe Smith Jr. In the exchange after the second knockdown. Uppercut hurts Joe. Beterbiev basically kind of smothers him, swarms him, throws some big shots. Joe Smith basically falls and gets caught in between the ropes. The referee counts it as a third knockdown, and yeah, at this point the writing is just on the wall. At this point, Joe, he's on unsteady legs and he's not trading as much with Beterbiev after the third knockdown. Beterbiev starts to time Joe Smith Jr. with his overhand right as Joe Smith Jr. is dipping to his right. You know, and Joe felt a couple of those shots. At this point, it feels like Joe's getting hurt with every shot that Artur lands clean. Then Artur landed a beautiful uppercut combination. Left uppercut, followed by right uppercut. That stunned Joe Smith Jr. Then Beterbiev threw another overhand right, kind of made Joe backpedal and stumble. And that is when the referee jumps in to wave the fight off. I felt it was a good stoppage. The referee gave Joe every opportunity. I mean, he was dropped 3 times. He was hurt on numerous occasions. I felt the stoppage was perfect, quite frankly. So credit to the referee for that. And yeah, I mean, this was a very, very good performance by Artur Beterbiev. I mean, again, I expected Joe to have some moments in this fight. I really did. I picked Beterbiev to win, and to win by stoppage, but yeah, I mean, this was one-sided. This was a demolition, you know, and I'm not being hyperbolic. It was just an easy fight for Beterbiev, you know, and he looked good doing it. And in doing so, of course, he is now the unified light heavyweight champion, WBO, WBC, IBF, and lineal. He is the man at light heavyweight. I know people are talking about Dmitry Bivol, cool, but Beterbiev's the man, and I believe he beats everybody at 175 right now. The big problem for Beterbiev is that he's 37 years old, so, you know, the wheels could come off at any point, I guess you could say, right? Or he could start to decline quite rapidly, which is a shame because, for me, we've never really... Beterbiev isn't in his prime right now, and this is what he's doing. Imagine we got to see this guy in his prime, fighting more actively, without the injuries, without the promotional disputes. Imagine that. I've seen enough now. I know there's a lot of Kovalev fans out there on my channel. I've seen enough now to where I believe Beterbiev, a prime Beterbiev, would have beaten a prime Kovalev. He would have beaten a prime Andre Ward. I think he would have beaten a prime Stevenson. I'm not saying those guys couldn't win that fight, but I would make Beterbiev a favourite in those. I really would. I really would. And also, this myth of Artur Beterbiev having a bad shin, I mean, I think this needs to be knocked on the head now, quite frankly. I'm not saying that Beterbiev is indestructible, because he's not. Callum Johnson hurt him and hurt him badly, right? We get that, cool. But Callum Johnson is a big puncher, just like Joe Smith was, and what happened? Joe Smith caught Beterbiev with a few shots here in this fight. Nothing happened. Alexander Vodzik caught Beterbiev coming in on more than one occasion. Nothing happened. There is nothing wrong with Beterbiev's chin. I'm not saying he can't get hurt. Of course he can. But, like, I've heard people say he's got a weak chin. That is absolute nonsense. Absolute nonsense. This was a man who was fighting heavyweights as an amateur. You know, it's nonsense. It really is. And yeah, I mean, I wonder whether Joe Smith Jr. brought into that. I mean, he mentioned it pre-fight, how Beterbiev got dropped by Callum Johnson and he's been down before. He kind of thought like that, like he was going to land one shot and it would hurt Beterbiev and that'd be it. Well, look what happened. Look what happened. In my opinion, Beterbiev is the best light heavyweight in the world right now. As long as Beterbiev stays healthy and, you know, his age doesn't play a significant factor, I can't see anybody beating him at light heavyweight. I really can't, including Dmitry Bivol. I can't see anybody beating him. And that goes on to our next point. Post-fight, Artur Beterbiev versus Anthony Yarde in London was announced. I believe that will go down in October. Now, I rate Anthony Yarde more than most, not in terms of his standing in the light heavyweight division currently, but in terms of his raw potential. I've always believed that Anthony Yarde has had a lot of raw potential that his training team hasn't really been able to harness and improve upon. But yeah, I mean, Anthony Yarde's a fun fighter. He's got power of his own, but yo, he's going to get absolutely squashed. He's going to get hurt. I'm sure Yarde will make it exciting, but I think he's going to get wrecked, quite frankly. I really do. But we'll see what happens there. But yeah, Beterbiev, in my opinion, the #1 guy at light heavyweight. Great performance. You know, hopefully he gets this Yarde fight, takes care of it. It's a Mando. Hopefully he takes care of Yarde, and we see Beterbiev versus Dmitry Bivol. I think that's the fight we all want to see now, right? So yeah, anyway, Beterbiev, onwards and upwards for him. As for Joe Smith Jr., I mean, does he want to go on now? I mean, I think there's fights still out there for him. I mean, he's still a fun fighter, Joe Smith Jr., right? And I think he'll give a lot of guys trouble in the light heavyweight division, but maybe this was Joe's mountaintop and he just failed to climb it, and maybe he calls it a day now. Regardless, he's been a good servant to the sport of boxing. I felt he got kind of lucky in the Vlasov fight, but, you know, he's an honest fighter. He's a good, honest pro. Comes to fight every single time. Big puncher, good fighter as well, but just not enough, you know, not elite like Beterbiev. Beterbiev is elite, you know, whereas Joe Smith is just, he's world class, but he's not elite, and that showed tonight. Anyway, share your thoughts below. Speedy Guy Del Boy, peace.